Hi, and welcome to today's weekly current. Today is Wednesday, October 9th, 2024. A jellyfish with a superpower. It can fuse with another and become one. A little more than a year ago, while biologist Kei Jokura was in Woods Hole, Mass., he routinely walked down to the water scanning for comb jellies. They look like jellyfish, he says, but they're completely different. It's a blob the size of a silver dollar, with little hairs that ripple along the edges of its mostly see-through body. Jokura says it possible that the first nervous system to ever evolve on Earth was inside an ancient comb jelly, a distant ancestor of the ones he was scooping out of the water. He likens the search to a thrilling kind of treasure hunt. You can definitely miss it, he says, but his trick is to look for sunlight reflecting off their bodies. Jokura took the comb jellies he found back to the lab in Woods Hole and put them in a tank. One day, he went to check on them, and a particular comb jelly caught his eye. One that led to a paper just published in the journal Current Biology. I was surprised because a weird shape was there, he recalls. It was fatter. It had 2 heads, 2 mouths, and 2 anuses. Jokura thought to himself, "Oh, I think these 2 individuals fused together." He took off at a sprint, fat comb jelly in a beaker to show his lab mates. I was like, "What? That's weird," says neurologist Mariana Rodriguez Santiago of Colorado State University. And so I went to see it, and I was like, "Oh, it is fused. Oh, and it's moving together." This was a striking observation. If this being was once 2 individuals, it was now behaving as one. The next thing Rodriguez Santiago did was to poke it. "I poked it mostly to see if they would unstuck," she says. But instead, the muscles contracted at the same time. This suggested that it had a shared nervous system. The researchers went on about trying to find if its little translucent fatty was an anomaly, or whether they could recreate it. "So we did some Frankenstein pilot experiments," says Rodriguez Santiago. They sliced comb jellies in different spots, and when they snipped them along their edges and placed them near one another, within an hour or 2, they fused 9 out of 10 times. In addition, the team fed the fused jellies prined shrimp with fluorescent dye so they could keep track of the food particles. One comb jelly ate it, and it traveled through the gut of both of them, and the second comb jelly pooped it out, says Rodriguez Santiago. "I thought this was really fun paper to read," says Allison Edgar, an integrative biologist in the New Jersey Institute of Technology, who wasn't involved in the research. She says comb jelly fusion has been observed before, but this is the first time that scientists have documented the individuals behaving as one. Edgar is excited by what this discovery might mean for humans. If comb jellies do have this great mechanism for regenerating and healing, she says, that would mean you could have an organ transplant with no consequences, and you would heal from it very quickly. She says given how rapidly the 2 comb jellies' nervous systems became one, it could teach humans how to allow someone to regain full control over a transplanted limb, say, but she admits that the kind of advance is way off. In other words, comb jellies may be transparent, but they hold secrets that are still very much opaque. Nobel Prize in Physics awarded to 2 scientists for discoveries in machine learning. John Hopfield and Geoffrey Hinton, seen in picture, are awarded this year's Nobel Prize in Physics, which is announced at a press conference by Hans Ellergren Center, permanent secretary at the Swedish Academy of Sciences in Stockholm, on Tuesday. John Hopfield and Geoffrey Hinton were awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics Tuesday for discovering and inventions that formed the building blocks of machine learning. This year's 2 Nobel laureates in physics have used tools from physics to develop methods that are the foundation of today's powerful machine learning, the Nobel Committee said in a press release. Hoffeld's research is carried out at Princeton University, and Hinton works at the University of Toronto. Ellen Moons, a member of the Nobel Committee at the Royal Swedish Academy of Science, said the 2 laureates used fundamental concepts from statistical physics to design artificial neural networks that function as associative memories and find patterns in large data sets. She said that such networks have been used to advance research in physics and have also become part of our daily lives. For instance, in facial recognition and language translation. The Nobel Prize in Physics was awarded a day after 2 American scientists won the Medicine Prize for the discovery of microRNA. 3 scientists won last year's Physics Nobel Prize for providing the first split-second glimpse into the superfast world of spinning electrons, a field that could one day lead to better electronics or disease diagnosis. The 2023 award went to French-Swedish physicist Anne L. Huer, French scientist Pierre Agostini, and Hungarian-born Ferenc Krausz for their work with a tiny part of each atom that races around the center and is fundamental to virtually everything: chemistry, physics, our bodies, and our gadgets. 6 days of Nobel announcements opened Monday with Americans Victor Ambros and Gary Ruvkun winning the Medicine Prize for the discovery of tiny bits of genetic material that serve as on and off switches inside cells that help control what the cells do and when they do it. If scientists can better understand how they work and how to manipulate them, it could one day lead to powerful treatments for disease like cancer. The Physics Prize carries a cash award of 11 million Swedish kroner, $1 million, from a bequest left by the award's creator, Swedish inventor Alfred Nobel. It has been awarded 117 times. The laureates are invited to receive their awards at ceremonies on December 10th, the anniversary of Nobel's death. Nobel announcements continue with the Chemistry Physics Prize on Wednesday and Literature on Thursday. The Nobel Peace Prize will be announced Friday and the Economics Award on October 14th. Lots of kids wear Crocs, but are they bad for young feet? Crocs are comfy, water-resistant footwear that are popular with kids. But some podiatrists say they should be alternated for more sturdy shoes. What's squishy, water-resistant, and on kids' feet everywhere? That's right, we're talking Crocs. These clog-like shoes have become a popular fashion statement among kids and teens. And let's be honest, some parents too. And even as we head into fall, but are they bad for developing feet? I do have pretty strong opinions about this particular issue, says Dr. Priya, a podiatrist in Silver Spring, Maryland, and a spokesperson for the American Podiatric Medical Association. On one hand, as a mom of 3, Priya says Crocs are great for certain situations, like the pool or the beach. Crocs are a godsend when you're trying to get out of the house, because my 3-year-old can put them on independently, she says. But as a podiatrist, she treats many kids and teens. She's seeing issues that come from wearing Crocs all day, every day. I've seen more structural issues like heel pain, arch pain, and sometimes more hammer toes. Because you have to grip the shoe to keep them on, and so the toes are overworking, she says. Priya is among several foot and ankle specialists who warned online that Crocs aren't the best choice for all-day footwear. She says one problem is that Crocs and their knockoffs are not particularly stable. While they do come with a heel strap, a lot of kids ignore it and wear them like slides. She says they also lack arch support. And they're not great at wicking away moisture, which can lead to blisters over time. She's also seen kids with foot injuries after their Crocs slid off because they are wide, so they don't grip the foot very well, as, say, a sneaker. In a statement to NPR, Crocs said its shoes are designed to be comfortable for everyday wear, adding that the easy on-off design is what makes them a great choice for kids. We are unaware of any substantiated health complications with wearing our products. Priya says while she hasn't come across any published data on Crocs and kids, her concerns are based on her own observations as a doctor and a mom. The problem is that with wearing any shoes, Crocs or otherwise, that are little too loose is that if you have a sort of shuffle when you walk in them, that can lead to subtle changes in your gait and how you distribute your weight, said Dr. Imthab Iyer, an orthopedic foot ankle surgeon at Johns Hopkins University. He says over time, these changes can take a toll on the foot and the ankle and even the rest of the body. As silly as it might sound, the foot bone connected to the ankle bone, if you will, from the nursery rhyme, all the things are interlinked, Iyer says. That said, Iyer says he's not coming for your Crocs after all. His kids wear them too. Using them is great, Iyer says. They're comfortable, as many people describe, but they have some downstream effects if they're the only type of shoe that you're using. With most things in life, it's all about moderation, Iyer says. Ideally, kids would alternate their Crocs with other sturdier shoes, especially when running around, Priya says. She says that's particularly true for toddlers, since they're still figuring out the mechanics of walking. If kids refuse to wear anything else, Priya says, just keep an eye out for signs of foot discomfort. For example, kids might have trouble keeping up with you when you're walking, or they might complain of tired or hurting feet. But as long as they seem okay, she says it's not worth fighting over Crocs. Even if you wear them all day and they're not complaining of foot issues, no, it's not the worst thing in the world, Priya says. After all, she says parents have enough to worry about already. It was a pie-in-the-sky ridiculous idea. The U.S. homes made from waste materials. Earthships are designed to withstand the extreme temperatures of the desert, such as that surrounds Taos, where extreme weather runs from sub-zero in winter to sweltering in summer. Venture into New Mexico's beautifully stark high desert, and you may well stumble across the fantastical and unconventional homes, some palatial and sculpturally rounded, others with an ancient temple-like form that look like they're from a Star Wars movie. Set in and around the town of Taos, where they were invented almost 40 years ago, these are Earthships. Net zero, sustainably designed homes built mostly from both natural and waste materials, such as old tires, empty wine bottles, and wood and mud. Since Earthship construction requires less in the way of toxic or carbon-emitting construction, materials like concrete and plastic, and doesn't require precious woodland and other natural resources, these exquisite homes are increasingly sought after worldwide. Earthships sell for anything around $500,000 to $900,000 and are also available for overnight stays in and near Taos for around $240 per night. The Earthship movement began in Taos in the 1970s after Kentucky native Michael Reynolds, founder of Eco Construction Company, Earthship Biotexture, moved here in 1969 with an architecture degree. His goal, to ride dirt bikes for fun, he says. The now 71-year-old soon had an aha moment. I saw CBS News anchor Walter Cronkite in the news talking about clear-cutting forests for timber and creating not only erosion but an oxygen problem because the trees put out oxygen, Reynolds told the BBC. He was talking about what we call climate change and global warming now. I was seeing all these beer cans tossed away and I'm saying, why don't we just build out of beer cans and not trees? This sustainably designed home is built mostly from both natural and waste materials. Reynolds built his beer can house in 1971, gaining small notice for the news for its quirkiness. Yet it went on to be exhibited in various parts of the world, including the Louvre Museum in Paris and the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. Reynolds notes with some incredulity, MoMA just bought a beer can brick for $4,500. Indeed, after using one of the building blocks made of beer cans in an exhibit, the museum decided to add one to its permanent collection. Still, for years, he was largely looked at as a kook at best, and not a serious architect. It was kind of a pie-in-the-sky ridiculous idea. But I went ahead and started going in that direction, Reynolds says. I started using bottles, and I started using tires, and I kept going. I've been in this direction for easily 55 years, and then around 36 years ago, I first labeled a home as an Earthship. Each Earthship has a greenhouse on one side so residents can grow their own food. But it's taken a long time to get to the point of wider acceptance. You know, they look too weird and they still look strange, but now people are getting it. And they're also open to it because many people are 2 paychecks away from being homeless and getting crippled by electric and utility bills. Reynolds says of the financially empowering aspect of living off-grid. And now people want to reverse climate change. Taos is a place that has long attracted artists and individualists. Its ancient pueblo and newer town has striking architecture and mostly traditional viga-beamed adobe homes, whose roofs are made of wood and beaten earth. Taos was the perfect incubator for Earthships, which have a thick wall of tires, each packed with earth. An earth berm, a purposely built bank of soil, surrounds the Earthship on 3 sides, providing insulating mass that controls temperature. Cooling is via traditional transom windows set up high on supporting beams to cross-ventilate and the building pipes vents. Each has a greenhouse, as Reynolds believes people should have the ability to grow their own food. Either on the north or south side, depending on location. Most Earthships are purely solar powered. Some also have wind turbines to supplement or a wood-burning stove as backup. Taos has cold, snowy winters and often dry, hot summers. But in an Earthship, the internal temperature remains close to 72 degrees Fahrenheit year-round, regardless of outside weather conditions. Reynolds moved into his first Earthship 35 years ago. He says, and raised his family there. He still lives there. It's so comfy, we don't want to leave it, he shrugs. What does it feel like to stay inside the Earthship? It feels like you're inside the womb, says Earthship construction manager Deborah Binder. You feel constantly hugged and snuggled. The temperature is always comfortable. Sometimes when it's really cold outside, I'll walk out without a coat, not realizing because it's so warm inside. Binder came on board 11 years ago to manage a nonprofit project in Malawi, Africa. Without any background in construction, she says, not only did she stay with the company, she moved to Taos and currently rents an Earthship while she builds her own. Binder also teaches at the Earthship Academy, which attracts attendees of all types to learn Earthship design principles, construction methods, and philosophy. Most people want to learn for themselves, Binder says. Some learn to build for community projects. Despite their environmental appeal, Earthships are still not accepted as an option to ease the housing and climate change crisis. They're still on the fringe in a way, says Binder. It's really important for people to stay in one. The feeling you have living in them is unique, but on a practical level, you don't pay any utility bills. That's quite amazing. Once people experience them, they usually want one, Reynolds adds, something that is born out of the way of many glowing testimonials in the guest books placed in each Earthship rental. Reynolds believes it could not be more timely, urgent even, to make Earthships the norm. His goal is to build rentable community housing as an answer to homelessness and planet-devastating energy consumption. I'm not that interested in commissions. Having a client just slows me down, he says. I need to turn them out as fast and lease them for people for a fair rent. Reynolds is in full steam ahead with his latest streamlined Refuge Earthship model, which he thinks could help with homelessness and poverty due to the simple economics of not paying huge utility bills each month. Refuge is the most economical model to build, the one we are going to replicate all over the globe, he says passionately. Then there is a whimsical Atlantis, a striking curvy turquoise Earthship created as an example of the building's sculptural artful side. There is an art side to them. I've played with the bottles as stained glass, and there's the sculptural aspect. They are beautiful, says Reynolds, who put himself through college by working as an artist. What's really beautiful is they take care of people while taking care of planet. There's not as much meaning in art as there is in a home. Why Joker, Folie à Deux mega budget spelled disaster. The comic book sequel has bombed at the box office, but what makes its performance even more catastrophic is its astronomical cost, estimated to be more than 3 times the original. It's one of the debacles that must have seemed like a good idea at the time. In 2019, Todd Phillips' Joker rewrote the superhero rulebook by putting Batman's arch-enemy into a dingy urban psychodrama. The film was a commercial and critical smash, and Joaquin Phoenix won an Oscar for playing Arthur Fleck, aka the Joker. So it made sense that Phillips and Phoenix should reunite for a sequel. And when it was announced that Joker, Folie à Deux, would be a musical co-starring Lady Gaga as Lee Ginsel, aka Harley Quinn, that didn't seem like such a bad idea either. Once again, Phillips was dropping DC comic characters into an unexpected genre. This time, it hasn't paid off. Joker, Folie à Deux, made $37.8 million in its opening weekend in the US, which is less than half of what the first film ranked in over the same period. In Deadline, Antonio D. Alessandro called it one of the lowest sequel openings in memory to a major franchise film based on a comic book, adding the damning comparison that has done even worse at this stage than last year's Marvel flop, The Marvels. For those of us who saw Folie à Deux when it premiered at the Venice Film Festival last month, the catastrophic result isn't a huge surprise, as Phillips and his team appeared intent on disappointing and even mocking fans of the original Joker, rather than showing Arthur cutting a bloody swath through Gotham City plutocrats. The new film asserts that he is a pathetic shell of a man whom only the deluded would admire. There aren't many other Hollywood films in which money is so shockingly not on the screen. What's more, Phillips makes this assertion in the most self-indulgent, navel-gazing fashion. Most sequels either advance the story told by their predecessor or retell the story with a few variations. But this one spends more than 2 hours reminiscing about that story instead. Whether Arthur's past crimes are being discussed by this therapist and an interviewer in Arkham Asylum or by lawyers and witnesses in Gotham City courtroom, scene after scene is devoted to people talking about what happened in a 5-year-old film. Those debates may have been interesting in a magazine article, a spin-off graphic novel, or a chat in the pub, but they're not the stuff of a $200 million blockbuster. Yes, you read that correctly. Folie à Deux is reported by different outlets to have cost between $190 million and $200 million. An almost unbelievable leap from the first budget of $65 million. And that's the real reason why its opening weekend is so calamitous. If it had cost as much as Joker, or even twice as much, its box office takings might not have looked so paltry. But around 3 times as much, Folie à Deux is a folly. Hollywood's spiraling costs. Not that this is the craziest amount of money spent on Hollywood film in recent times. Last year, an article in the Daily Telegraph listed some of the astronomically expensive blockbusters that were coming out, including Fast X, $340 million, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, $300 million, Mission Impossible, Dead Reckoning Part 1 is $290 million, and The Flash is $220 million. Stack the marketing costs on top of these figures, and they all had to perform phenomenally well to break even. In the end, it is estimated that none of these films made significant profit, and Indiana Jones and The Flash made significant losses. But the article played much of the blame for these films' monumental costs on the visual effects, especially those visual effects that had to be finished at a top speed to suit studio set in zone release schedule. And whatever you thought of them, each of those films looked like a bona fide blockbuster in terms of the star-studded casts, the global locations and elaborate stunts, and yes, the visual effects. They were all so spectacular that you could see the money on the screen, as the expression goes. That's not the case with the Phillips Dinghy, a small-scale courtroom drama. Indeed, there aren't many other Hollywood films in which money is so shockingly not on the screen. Folie à Deux doesn't have big action set pieces. It doesn't have jaw-dropping effects. It's true that Phoenix and Gaga don't work for free, but neither of them is a film industry megastar. And it's true that there are song and dance numbers, but these pay tribute to old musicals and TV specials, so they're not especially lavish. A detailed breakdown of where all the money went would be much more gripping to read than the film's screenplay. Ultimately, the whole enterprise starts to feel like a weirdly postmodern joke at Hollywood's expense. In Joker, Arthur attacked Gotham's wealthiest people, and he railed against the smugness of the entertainment industry. This time around, the overspending and underperforming of the film itself had achieved the same goal. Folie à Deux has burnt a mountain of studio cash in a way that reminiscent of Heath Ledger's Joker, setting fire to cigarettes of $100 bills in The Dark Knight. It might have been nobler if Phillips had spent all those millions on something worthwhile. when Cord Jefferson won the Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay for American Fiction. In March, he made a point in his acceptance speech that now feels like a president critique of the Joker, Folia Doe's situation. I understand that this is a risk-averse industry. I get it. But $200 million movies are also a risk, he said. And it doesn't always work out, but you take the risk anyway. And instead of making one $200 million movie, try making $10-20 million. Try making $10-20 million movies, or $54 million movies. If studio executives weren't listening to Jefferson then, maybe they'll listen now. Last month, the Federal Reserve lowered interest rates for the first time in more than 4 years, a decision which could lead to lower borrowing costs on mortgages, credit cards, and saving rates for millions of people. But it remains to be seen whether the change in rates will change people's outlook on the economy. The overall situation has degraded. Ms. Scanlon, 27, told the BBC, noting that young people today have it worse than previous generations. Even millennials who entered the workforce after the 2008 financial crisis. A Gen Zer herself, Ms. Scanlon often turns to TikTok, where she has more than 180,000 followers, to educate young people about the economy. People ages 22 to 24 hold more debt of all kinds: credit cards, car loans, and mortgages. The millennials did at the same age. The credit agency TransUnion found, and their debt is rising faster than their income. There's no beginner mode anymore. The bottom rung of the ladder just feels completely gone, I think, for most of this generation, Ms. Scanlon said. And those fears of being left behind could drive voters to the ballot box, experts say. Abby Kiza, Deputy Director of the Center for Information and Research on Civic Learning and Engagement, Circle, told the BBC she expects about half of young voters to turn out this election, a similar turnout to 2020, which had the highest turnout in decades, and an 11% increase compared to presidential election in 2016. Meanwhile, the 2018 midterms saw a record-breaking turnout among young voters, according to Circle. They're still far below the turnout of other age groups. In 2020, 69% of eligible Americans 35 to 64 voted, while 74% of voters over the age of 65 went to the polls, according to the U.S. Census. But in an election that will be won by a razor's edge, being able to rally a significant percentage of new voters could help a candidate the boost they need to win. Ms. Kisa, still focusing on addressing economic hardship, will be a key if politicians hope to boost turnout among Gen Zers feeling disconnected from politics. For the past 3 elections, turnout among young voters has been historic, she said. We need candidates who understand, engage, and speak with them. That's what has to change. Will dollars and cents win votes? 2 presidential nominees, Trump and Harris, have both sharpened their economic message in recent weeks and stepped up efforts to appeal to young voters. Harris has expanded on the Biden administration's economic initiatives around student loan forgiveness, consumer pricing, and housing affordability. She's proposed a $25,000 subsidy for first-time home buyers and a $6,000 tax credit for families with newborns. Her campaign has doubled her youth organizing staff and invested heavily in digital ads. She has enjoyed endorsements from high-profile celebrities, including Taylor Swift and Billie Eilish, and built momentum by embracing viral memes about the vice president on social media. Harris has also spent the last year touring college campuses in the key battleground states. Meanwhile, Trump has sought to capitalize on economic dissatisfaction among young people, attacking Harris and Biden's economic record and highlighting lower prices on goods under his administration. Both he and Harris have promised to eliminate tip taxation, a move aimed at the service industry, which employs millions of young people, and committed in ending regulatory barriers on cryptocurrency. The former president has also tried to reach young voters through social media, podcasts, and partnerships with influencers. He's posted TikToks with influencers like Luke Paul and Adin Ross. Polls showed Trump being in inroads among young voters while he was running against Biden, who is 81. When he was still in the race, he led Trump by only a few percentage points, and the Gen Forward survey showed young people thought he handled the economy better than the Biden administration. But momentum has shifted back to the much younger Harris. She now holds a 31-point lead over Trump among the likely voters aged 18 to 29, according to the Harvard Institute of Politics poll released in late September. We need representation. Economic woes aren't just driving people to vote. They're lighting a fire in some young people to run for office themselves. Gabriel Sanchez, 27, a Democratic candidate for the Georgia state legislation, said he's running for office to try to help ease the financial strain on his generation. As a waiter at a sports bar, he said hikes have forced him to move repeatedly. He is concerned that essentials like stable housing are becoming a privilege for many young Americans. Most of us aren't able to own a home, afford health care, or buy the basic things we need, Sanchez said in a TikTok posting on his campaign account. In May, Sanchez and 3 other young candidates cruised to victory in Georgia's Democratic primary election, an outcome dubbed as Gen Z's night in Atlanta. Sanchez said he believes his economic struggles resonated with voters. We're working hard, but not seeing any rewards. The economy isn't working for us. Sanchez said, we need representation, candidates who understand what young people are going through. But it's not only Democrats that are luring young candidates. Wyatt Gable, a 21-year-old, in his last year at East Carolina University, won Republican primary for North Carolina's House of Representatives. He defeated George Cleveland, a 10-term 85-year-old incumbent. If elected in November, Wyatt will become the youngest person ever to hold a seat in the state legislature. As he prepares for the November vote, he said he expects the economy to be top of mind for young people at the polls this year. My generation feels it. Seeing how bad inflation is, and with interest rates skyrocketing, it's going to be the biggest thing on young people's minds when they go to the ballot box, he said. Hurricane Milton intensifies explosively into a Category 5 as it nears Florida. Workers place sheets of wood over windows and glass doors to protect them from the strong winds expected with the arrival of Hurricane Milton in the hotel zone of Cancun, Ru State, Mexico on Monday. Hurricane Milton exploded in strength Monday to become potentially catastrophic Category 5 storm-bound for Florida, the furious storm to hit the region in as many weeks. Less than 2 weeks after Hurricane Helene slammed into Florida's Gulf Coast and wreaked path of destruction across the southeastern U.S., the state is bracing for another, and likely even more powerful, major hurricane to come ashore. Hurricane Milton reached Category 5, the strongest of the classifications, on Monday morning. With maximum sustained winds of 175 miles per hour, The National Hurricane Center said in its 8 p.m. Eastern Time update, the NHC said its sustained winds had reached 180 miles per hour, and the central pressure in the storm's eye had fallen to a near record low. A lower pressure means a more powerful and potent storm. Milton poses an extremely serious threat to Florida and is a life-threatening situation, the NHC said. The storm surge is predicted to be as high as 15 feet in some areas. According to hurricane historian Philip Klotzbach, only 2 known hurricanes have had 180 miles per hour winds in the Gulf of Mexico since 1950. Allen in 1980, and Rita in 2005. The storm is expected to make landfall on Florida's Gulf Coast late Wednesday or early Thursday. Meanwhile, NASA has delayed the return of the 4 people on the Crew 8 mission who were supposed to splash down on Florida this week on a SpaceX Crew Dragon capsule. They've been locked in the International Space Station since March. NASA now says they won't undock until Sunday at the earliest, due to Hurricane Milton. Milton's surprisingly explosive intensification. After being upgraded from tropical storm on Sunday, Milton underwent what forecasters called an explosive intensification, blowing past Category 4 strength in a matter of hours. The National Hurricane Center had predicted earlier Monday that Milton would become a Category 5 storm, reaching maximum sustained winds of 165 miles per hour in 12 hours before gradually weakening. But it strengthened even faster than experts predicted, with NHC Director Michael Brennan calling its rate of intensification extreme in a Monday morning brief. The NHC says it has seen such rapid strengthening in a storm system only twice before, Wilma in 2005 and Felix in 2007. There are simply no words to describe the extraordinary intensification we have witnessed in this storm today. U.S. Storm Watcher weather analyst Colin McCarthy posted on X on Monday. The Yucatan and Florida peninsulas prepare. As the Monday evening update, Milton was just off Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula and moving east. Much of the Yucatan Peninsula coast is under a hurricane warning. In contrast, hurricane watches, storm surge watches, and tropical storm watches and warnings are in effect for parts of the west coast of the Florida Peninsula. The storm is forecast to weaken slightly before it makes landfall on Wednesday, but it is still predicted to be a major hurricane then. For instance, Hurricane Katrina in 2005 was a Category 5 in the Gulf, but weakened to Category 3 before hitting Louisiana and Mississippi. Milton, like Katrina, will be pushing a big wall of water ahead of its arrival. The NHC says most models agree that Milton will cross the Florida Peninsula. However, people should not focus on the exact track, because models still disagree about landfall's exact location and timing. Even so, forecasters warn that it will likely be a large and powerful hurricane to landfall in Florida, with life-threatening hazards along portions of the coastline. They say areas of heavy rainfall will impact portions of Florida on Monday, and again on Tuesday through Wednesday night, bringing the risk of considerable flash, urban, and aerial flooding, and the potential for moderate major river flooding. Parts of the Florida Peninsula and Keys could see 5 to 10 inches of rain through Wednesday night, with localized totals of up to 15 inches in some areas. There is also a growing risk of life-threatening storm surge and damaging winds for parts of Florida's west coast beginning late Tuesday or early Wednesday. Forecasters say it could raise water levels to as high as 8 to 12 feet in coastal areas of Florida, including Tampa Bay. Speaking at a Monday morning briefing, Kevin Guthrie, the executive director of the Florida Division of Emergency Management, implored Tampa Bay residents under the evacuation orders to heed them. "I beg you, I implore you to evacuate," he said. "Drowning deaths due to storm surge are 100% preventable if you leave." Several Florida counties have ordered evacuations, and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said Monday that people should expect a flurry of them. State officials are urging Floridians to follow local guidance and make emergency preparations, whether they are evacuating or sheltering at home. "You have an opportunity today to do what you need to do to evacuate this plan," DeSantis said Monday, "but time is going to start running out very, very soon." Early models show Hurricane Milton making landfall in Florida midweek, before exiting into the Atlantic Ocean, sparing many of the state's hardest hits by Hurricane Helene. Floridians are bracing for evacuations and impact. DeSantis has already expanded an emergency declaration to cover 51 of the state's 67 counties and is warning people across the peninsula to prepare. "Do not get wedded to the cone," he posted on X on Sunday. "Floridians should prepare now for potential impacts, even if you live outside of the forecast cone." Guthrie of the Florida Division of Emergency Management said on Sunday that the state is preparing for the largest evacuation that we have seen, most likely since 2017 Hurricane Irma, when nearly 6.8 million Floridians left their homes, resulting in statewide traffic jams. But he also cautioned inland residents who don't live in an evacuation zone or depend on electricity for medical needs that it may be better for you just to stay in place. Emergency officials are reminding Floridians that they may not need to evacuate far, potentially only several miles, to a higher elevation or wind-proof shelter. A growing number of Florida counties have ordered evacuations of certain areas and home types, like recreational vehicles, mobile homes, boats, effective Monday. Those include Charlotte, Manatee, Pasco, Hillsborough, and Sarasota counties, and Pinellas County, which ordered the evacuation of certain residential healthcare facilities starting Sunday. Emergency officials are urging Floridians to look up their zone, plan an evacuation route, and leave as soon as they're ordered to do so. Guthrie also said that Floridians should consider that many are still recovering from Helene. Did they use up their reserves of water, food, and pet food? Do they need to buy fresh batteries? Have they restocked their supply kits to last each family member for 7 days? "Please make sure you're doing that today," he said. DeSantis said at a Monday morning news conference that the Florida Division of Emergency Management is already fielding hundreds of resource requests from communities preparing for the storm, sending truckloads of food and water to Central Florida and deploying more than 2,000 feet of flood protection systems, prioritizing critical infrastructure like hospitals and fire stations. He also said that the state is ramping up its efforts to remove outstanding debris from Helene, which would add a layer of danger and potential damage if picked up by Milton's strong winds, calling that a 24/7 round-the-clock mission. Lines started forming at gas stations on Sunday as people stocked up on fuel, water, and other supplies, member station WGCU reported. WGCU notes that public school districts in many counties will be closed from Monday through at least Wednesday, and that the Gulf Coast University near Fort Myers will close its campus Tuesday and Wednesday after shifting to remote operations. The St. Pete Clearwater International Airport has already announced the cancellation of all Allegiant Air flights on Wednesday and Thursday. NASA and SpaceX are also delaying the launch attempt of the Europa Clipper mission, which was originally scheduled for Thursday. Milton is forecast to spare other states submerged by Helene. Milton is poised to strike an area recovering from Hurricane Helene's Category 4 winds and rains, but it is expected to exit into the Atlantic Ocean, sparing many southeastern states that Helene hit hardest, including Georgia and the Carolinas. More than 220 people were killed by Helene, one of the deadliest hurricanes to hit the mainland U.S. since Hurricane Katrina in 2005. The Associated Press reports that about half the victims were in North Carolina, where historic flooding destroyed entire communities. The White House assured the American people on Monday that despite the strains Helene put on the agency, FEMA was prepared to support Florida through this storm. FEMA has sufficient funding to both support the response to Hurricane Milton and continue to support the response to Hurricane Helene, including funding to support first responders and provide immediate assistance to disaster survivors, and the White House said in a statement. Today, President Biden quickly approved the governor of Florida's request for an emergency declaration. Under an emergency declaration, FEMA provides direct federal support to states for life-saving activities and other emergency protective measures, such as evacuation, sheltering, and search and rescue. Abnormally warm water in the Gulf of Mexico, fueled by human-caused climate change, has made it easier for hurricanes to strengthen rapidly and bring even more wind and rain ashore. Milton is the 9th hurricane to form in 2024 Atlantic hurricane season, which runs from June through November. It's the fifth to form since September 25th, alone breaking a previous record of 2 during that period. Some storm researcher Philip Klotzbach said that this was officially the first time 3 simultaneous hurricanes were recorded in the Atlantic Ocean after September. Hurricane Leslie continues to brew, while Kirk was downgraded to a post-tropical cyclone late Monday morning.